What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are back for round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And today, in today's preview, we're going to be taking a look in the Eastern Conference, the final 2 teams in the Atlantic left. We're going to be taking a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. This is going to be a great matchup we've seen recently over the last couple of years. And it's been dominated by the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers, obviously, winning a Stanley Cup, a couple of deep playoff runs. The Florida Panthers are really, at this point, the team to beat in terms of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But Toronto, listen, this is the old saying is, right? If you want to beat the best, in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. And that's where things are at right now for Toronto. Now, there's easy ways to look at criticism here for the Leafs, but to be honest with you, I think they handled themselves really well in the first round. They were pretty much in control most of that series, and despite Ottawa getting 2 wins to make this a 3-2 series, it was 3-0 Toronto. Ottawa got 2 back, an overtime victory, and then a pretty important 4-0 victory in Toronto. Definitely made you doubt maybe that the Leafs were going to get it done, and then they go into game 6 and they take care of business like they were supposed to. So the way they got there, you couldn't have really asked for much better, honestly. I mean, yeah, obviously you would have liked to have swept the Senators, but the Senators were a serious foe, especially coming down the stretch. They played quite well, so to think that was just going to be an easy cakewalk series was a little bit ridiculous. And yeah, that's kind of how I think a lot of people expected it to go. So with that said, there was a lot of good things about the Leafs in this series. Game 1, obviously, they started off firing on all cylinders, winning that game 6-2. They won in overtime for game 2, a 3-2 victory. That was a big win for them. And then obviously really the dagger in this series, as nice as the comeback was for the Senators in games 4 and 5, game 3 was really the dagger in this series. That overtime goal by Simon Benoit really ended this series right then and there. And the Senators were going to give a good fight the rest of the way, but realistically for them to drag that out to a game 7 and win that series, it would have taken a Herculean effort from everybody on the Senators, and they unfortunately came up short. But like I said, let's give credit to the Leafs where it's due, right? The Leafs had to go in and win a series they were supposed to win, and they haven't done that recently. I mean, you look back at that Columbus Blue Jackets series a couple years ago, they've had a couple weird series where in the first round, right? Montreal in 2021, like series they were supposed to win in the first round but didn't. So, you can't take it lightly. That is still an important victory for the Leafs. So now looking at the Florida Panthers side of things, totally different story. So, and shout out to Luis. I know he's going to mention it here on kind of the comments here. But I mean, let's be honest. The Florida Panthers, I think I made a wrong prediction that I thought Tampa Bay was going to be the better team in this series, and I've been proven wrong before. But this was a series where Florida really showed us like they are still the Florida Panthers, and for everything that maybe just because we've just expected the Panthers to be good, like sometimes they get almost thrown under the radar because we just know what we expect from them, right? And I think that was kind of what happened in the first round. They just kind of showed everyone who's really the boss in Florida. Game 1, a similar story to what we saw in Toronto for the first game of that series. It was a 6-2 victory in Tampa Bay. A pretty nice margin of victory there. That was a big win for the Florida Panthers to go in there and just really put a lot of doubt in not only the Lightning players but the fans. It was a very eye-opening game 1 and was pretty telling for the rest of how the series was going to go. A 2-0 victory in game 2, or again a shutout. There's nothing to go around this. This Tampa Bay team has a lot of good offensive players. Kucherov, who's probably going to be in the Hart conversation. Braden Point, right? You go down all the depth that they added, especially at the deadline. They have a really good team in Tampa Bay. So to get a shutout and only give up 2 goals in the first 2 games, that's a pretty nice victory for the Florida Panthers just off of that. Now, game 3, Tampa Bay gives a little bit more of a fight. They end up winning game 3 5-1. So the Florida Panthers, maybe a little bit of adversity early in the series. Well, now they come back and win game 4 4-2. And then, the way they won game 4 is similar to what happened in game 3 of the Toronto-Ottawa series. And that's why I think both of these two teams, they are the best teams in the Atlantic. in a pivotal game like that where Ottawa could have maybe made it 2-1 in the series. Simone Benoit gets the depth big goal in overtime for the Leafs right off the faceoff. We saw something kind of similar in a different way in the Tampa Bay Lightning Panthers series. Most of this game, it looked like for certain Tampa Bay was winning this game. It was 2-1 Tampa pretty much most of the game, kept things really tight, not a lot of room, and then next thing you know, it's 4-2 Panthers with less than 3 minutes left, and it was just an utter collapse. And at that point, that's when you knew that Tampa Bay was going to lose this series. They were down 3-1 at this point, facing elimination the rest of the way. And the fact that they had a 2-1 lead for that pretty much the entire game, and then it just falls apart just like that. And it just evaporates in front of their face. You couldn't have really looked at it any other way. It was as much as it was an utter collapse for the Lightning, it was really a triumphant game for the Panthers to kind of show that, hey, listen, we're facing adversity in this series and we were able to fight back. And that's kind of how things ended, because in game 5 it was 6-3 Florida, and they just took care of business in that game. But really the big game in that series was that game 4 victory. So I think what's going to be really important in this series for the Florida Panthers to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs is, I think their key is they can beat you anyway, which I think is what's really threatening with the Panthers. And when we talk about some of the teams in the Metro, they can kind of play the same way. We'll talk about them in another video. But the Florida Panthers, if you want to get up in the muck with them and you want to take penalties and you want to get physical and gritty, the Panthers can play that game, and they could probably do it better than you with some of the players they have on that team, right? Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, right? Those guys can definitely do some damage to you, not only on the score sheet, but in just the mental game, the mind games. And the Leafs are really going to be tested in that regard. Are they going to maybe throw that last punch that the ref sees, right? Marchand or Bennett maybe gives it a little tug after the whistle or something like that. And then are we going to see guys like Marner and Matthews and Tavares, like, are they going to kind of, for lack of a better word, stoop down to that level and throw that extra punch when the ref is, happens to look up? There you go. Now the Leafs are on a penalty kill, right? So those are the type of things. If this series comes down to the ticky-tack stuff, the Leafs are going to have a difficult time winning this series, because I think that is something that the Panthers are just so good at, and that's why they've been so good in the playoffs. And for the Leafs, if you want to play the 5-on-5 game, which I think is their ideal way of winning this series, like the Panthers can also do that too, right? So I think this series is going to be a lot about, can the Leafs get some power play goals? Because that was a huge problem for the Lightning in their first round series against the Panthers. They were not able to score on the power play when they had those opportunities. They got caught stuck in the mud with the ticky-tack stuff with the Panthers. The Panthers were able to take advantage. They capitalized, and they were kind of able to control most of the momentum in this series. So that's going to be the storyline going into this series as well. I think both of these teams are very good teams, phenomenal teams, and honestly, teams that they should probably beat the team that wins out of the Metro, in my opinion. This is the window for the Panthers and the Leafs to win. And we're going to talk about it in the Metro, matchups in a minute. But I think that those two teams right now, the Panthers and the Leafs, that's probably what you're looking at coming out of the East. Obviously, things can change between now and then, but I really like what I've seen out of those two teams in the first round. So my prediction for this series, it's difficult, but honestly, with how much I underrated the Florida Panthers in the first round against Tampa Bay, and again, I don't want to discredit the Leafs for what they did in the first round against Ottawa, but they gave them a little bit of mercy, sending that series 2-6 when they probably shouldn't have. And that's why in this series, I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers winning this series in 7 games. I think they are the better team here. And like I said, it's the fact that they can beat you anyway. If this series gets stuck in the mud, like I think the way the Panthers want it to, I just don't know if the Leafs are going to be able to do what they need to do. Like, I think they are just a business casual. We're just going to try and skate and play the 5-on-5 game. But if the Panthers try to muck it up, and I think they will. Like I said, I think they will. They know that that's going to be their key to success. And Paul Maurice behind the bench and everything else, it's in favor of the Florida Panthers. And that's why I'm going to pick the Panthers in 7. But give the Leafs credit. They could definitely win this series too. This is a difficult one to predict. All right, so that's going to do it for today's video. Stay tuned for the rest of our playoff preview videos coming up here later today and tomorrow. As always, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'll see you again next time.